When Al Gore testified before Congress on global warming just a couple of months ago, it was a media circus. But also testifying that day without any fanfare, or really any coverage, was Bjorn Lomborg. He's the author of the best-selling book, The Skeptical Environmentalist. He's an expert on the economic impact of global warming. Bjorn, you are not a scientist, you're a political scientist, so I'm not going to ask any science questions. I want to ask you, as a guy who believes in man-made global warming, why don't you think Kyoto is the solution?
Well, essentially exactly because of what you showed in the clip. Kyoto is at the same time impossibly ambitious and yet entirely inconsequential when you talk about the environment. It'll cost lots of money and end up doing virtually no good. That's not a good deal.
Let me show the chart.
What we need to look at is to try to find smarter ways.
This is the chart. This is the impact of Kyoto here on this chart compared to if we do nothing?
Yes. Basically, no change. It'll basically postpone global warming for about 5 years at the end of the century.
Okay,
that's not a very good deal.
Let me play devil's advocate here. Al Gore has made mention of malaria a lot. Some people say we could save 100,000 people on malaria alone if we do something about global warming. Why wouldn't we save 100,000 people?
We could probably save about 85 million people from malaria if we did something about malaria. These people are suffering right now. Why is it we're talking about making very expensive moves, doing virtually no good 100 years from now, when there are real people that we can really save very cheaply from malaria right now?
Okay, we just had a situation, I don't remember what it was, just a few years ago, where we had a massive heat wave in Europe. 35,000 people in France alone died. Another 2,000 people died from this heat wave in England. If we don't stop global warming, won't things just get worse and worse and more people will die just from the heat?
Glenn, that's exactly true, and that's of course what Al Gore tells us. With global warming, you're going to see more heat deaths. But what most people don't tell us is we're also going to see much less cold deaths. And actually, many more people die from cold than from heat. So for England alone, you mentioned the number 2,000 people. Actually, that's what we expect will die from more heat waves in 2080. But what we have to remember is that 20,000 fewer will die from cold each year in 2080. Now, I'm not sitting and saying we should just go for global warming, but I'm saying we need to know both.
Okay. You started something called the Copenhagen Consensus, and this was a group of experts from the UN, economists, et cetera, and you prioritized all of the world's biggest problems and where we would be most effective in spending our money. AIDS was number one, right?
Yes. And basically the point is, again, to say we have a tendency to bark up the wrong tree. We worry intensely about climate change, but the point is we can do very little good at very high cost. Let's focus on where we can actually do a lot of good. If we care about this planet, if we care about its environment, shouldn't we do where we can do the most good first? What these Nobel laureates basically told us was if we spend our money on HIV/AIDS, we can do $40 worth of good for every dollar. If we spend it on Kyoto, we can only do 30 cents. Let's do the $40 first.
Give me the top 5 quickly, and where does global warming fall on that list?
Basically what they told us was it was HIV/AIDS, malnutrition, free trade, malaria, and agricultural research. Those are things that we can do cheaply and do an immense amount of impact in this world right now, and also for future generations. Kyoto came down at the bottom, not because climate change is not real, but simply because the way we tackle it through Kyoto is very expensive and a very poor way of helping the world.
Bjorn, thanks. Coming up, Al Gore and his inconvenient truths, plus scientists silenced for questioning the threat of global warming.
I know that I've had several friends who have essentially been told that if you speak out on climate change, you must do so as an independent citizen. If you do so through our organization or through our institution, you will essentially be fired.
And later, how the media is feeding you fear.
I'm going to tell you something about the media and global warming that you don't hear real often. It's not all your fault.
Okay? More of Exposed, the Climate of Fear, in a minute.